Hello again, Earthlings, and welcome back to Spaceship Kyle. My journey down the Tom DeLonge rabbit hole continues, and consider me captivated. I have no idea if what he's saying is real, how valid it is, but you can't deny. The guy left Blink 182 back in 2015, started talking about this stuff. Everybody was like, wow, he's off the deep end. People almost were like, oh, this is sad to watch. Some people may still feel that way. But you got to hand it to him. He went and started this To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences thing with the express purpose of spreading what he believes is the truth about what these UFOs are, about extraterrestrial life, interdimensional life, whatever it is. And now we have this report from the Pentagon that's being shared with Congress in June, this month. And confirmation of various UAP, UFO footage being confirmed by the Pentagon to at least be, okay, it's not doctored, it's not a hoax, it's not fake, in as much as they don't know what it is and they can't explain it. So these steps are happening. Who knows what's going to be revealed in the report? I'm trying not to get my hopes up or believe much of any of this stuff, but you gotta admit it's fun to talk about and fun to speculate on. And this guy, he's the lead singer of Blink 182. What if he's right? Just think about it. And he's playing an integral part in revealing these big, crazy things to humanity. So we're going to dive in. I found another old post. Same as the last video, basically. If you didn't like that, you're probably not going to like this one. I'm sorry. I'm going to read through it bullet by bullet. Because I'm transfixed by this stuff. I'm officially obsessed, I think. So this is again by Kiwi Bonga, who is a moderator of Our UFO, I have since learned. The subreddit about UFOs on Reddit, of course. Breaking down an interview from 2016 on Jimmy Church's Fade to Black. It's a radio show. Where he talks, he goes into detail. Tom DeLonge went into detail about a lot of these same things we talked about in the last video I posted. But some of it's even weirder. So if you thought that first video was weird, buckle up, folks, because this gets out there. I'd like to give a warning up front. You shouldn't take anything I say seriously, basically. Don't design your worldview around this nonsense, or try not to yet. Always be skeptical. Don't be dogmatic as much as possible. That kind of stuff. Figure things out. Be open-minded, but don't get taken for a ride. And hopefully don't let this stuff scare you too much. We got to keep living our lives. We got to keep treating each other well. We've got to love each other. We've got to respect each other. That's what's important. And the one thing I do like about all this Tom DeLonge stuff is that's built into his message as well. So we can all at least agree on that. Okay, I'm going to jump in. Originally posted August 30th, 2016. There's a link to the full interview on YouTube, which I think has been taken down. Starting off with a quote to reel us in here at the top. It says, "I know it sounds so strange. Why do you think I want to whiteboard the entire thing through movies, books, and documentaries? Because it's difficult for people to understand in one conversation. It sounds like stupid magic hokey pokey stuff. I know." So he knows. It sounds crazy. It is pretty crazy stuff. Keep an open mind as much as possible. Some of these things just automatically are going to turn people off. And I don't think there's any way around that. And we'll see if we'll see what happens with this stuff. Nobody knows. So the first point from Tom DeLonge back in 2016, he told the story of when he was invited to a secure government facility, pitched his media project to a high-ranking contact, and described once again going through numerous security checkpoints. At some point, the conversation with his contact steered toward the topic of consciousness in relation to how the spacecraft are piloted. The UFO phenomenon is tied to consciousness. He acknowledges that for a lot of people, it's going to sound like hokey pokey. I mean, consciousness is something that science has yet to really form a good theory on or explanation of, which makes it kind of fertile ground for both theorizing and also forming completely unformed opinion or opinions that aren't based on anything real, on anything empirical, and for potentially conspiracy theories. It's a fascinating topic. It's what makes us self-aware and aware of the world around us, and it affects the world seemingly in interesting ways, and vice versa. So nobody really knows. That's the thing. That's an unfalsifiable claim by definition, because we don't really understand consciousness to begin with. So next, the UFO phenomenon is connected to a special property of our universe that is manifested in all life forms. There's something special about the human body and emotions. If you had the proper tools, you could pick up the electromagnetic frequencies that are emanating from a human being and get a different readout depending on whether the person is happy, angry, jealous, etc. The UFO phenomenon is interested in the bad things, and it brings along a lot of bad things. But the good news is, when a human being feels good, feels loved, that energy is like a death nuke missile, straight to the UFO. We found that out over the years, and we're trying to understand it, but it's very complex stuff. That's the one thing I find uplifting about all this stuff. Even if it never comes to anything, if it's not true, at the end of the day, Tom DeLonge's message here is humanity should come together and love each other and defeat the evil spirits with the power of love. And I think we can all get on board with that, right? No matter how murky the details become or how out there it becomes. And trust me, it gets out there. We're making progress, but every time there's a breakthrough, every turn we take, we find something new that might be a lie, that might be deceptive, that might be a trick. The whole idea of quote-unquote bad government or a cabal or secret space programs is dumb. We're talking about regular people that are read into classified programs and find themselves changing their pants every night because they're trying to figure out how to deal with something that is strange and crazy. Another little side note here. I want more optimism in the world. And I have to admit, all of the negativity, all of the hatred and tribalism, all that stuff going on today, it feels sinister to me. It really does. I don't know if I'd go as far as all the things Tom DeLonge is saying, but it feels sinister. And I think we should all stop and question when we feel so much hatred and disappointment and fear against other humans. I don't like it. So again, points for the positive message here from Tom DeLonge. He says that we've figured out the capacity of a human being that is enlightened, that has those frequencies of human consciousness. Isn't that kind of the message of Interstellar? Is that part of the slow drip of this information was Interstellar? So yeah, those frequencies of human consciousness that are on the same level as emotions like love, happiness, or the way a child feels and all that stuff. So I get it. This is new agey sounding mumbo jumbo. This is the same stuff hippies have been saying for a really long time. The way a child feels. You know, that's even in the Bible where Jesus says, be like a child. He says, be like this child, right? When people are asking. I don't remember the exact verse, but this is stuff religions, New Age people have talked about, which a lot of this stuff kind of is. Yeah. So be forewarned. We're going to have to find a way to accelerate that. We're going to have to find a way to accelerate that in a way that people don't laugh at it. And accelerate that, he's talking about emotions like love, happiness, or whatever. So they did an episode on the now kind of disgraced, I don't know the whole story about behind the Reply All podcast. But I remember they brought a scientist on a while back who was measuring the words on Twitter and how happy and how miserable people have been over time. And basically, since they started measuring each year, humanity has just become more and more miserable. based on the analysis of the types of words and language that's being used on Twitter. Maybe that's all manipulation by aliens, and they're feeding off of our negative energy. The word alien, of course, we may find as we continue to read under the Tom DeLonge model of things, the Tom DeLonge theories. Alien is probably an oversimplification. So he says that you're in the middle of an abduction by little gray aliens, and you call the name of Jesus. The abduction just stops. But you can also call out the name of the source of galactic love, or call out Buddha. It's the fact that you are projecting positive energy, and that is something that needs to be understood and studied. Growing up as a Christian, I mean, most of the stuff, really, if you don't call them aliens, and if you call them demons, angels, it is basically what Tom DeLonge is describing is Christianity and other monotheistic religions, probably. There's a source of all love in the universe. Growing up, my mom taught me if I was scared, I could sing a song about Jesus, or I could ask for Jesus' help, and it works. Okay? For whatever reason, you're comforting yourself at the very least, and that kind of brings down the fear. And according to Tom DeLonge's theory, it also fights off aliens. So there you go. It's good stuff. Next up. But the fact is, there is a physical phenomenon. There are crashes, there are biological bodies, there's technology we can back engineer, but there's a component related to human consciousness that we also have to learn about and understand. It's very complex and difficult. Well, yeah, we can all agree human consciousness is complex and difficult. Nobody really understands it from a physical sciences, material sciences, biological level. He talks about the different people he's talking to in relation to all those issues. There are physicists studying the crash craft, medical doctors who studied abductees or people who were affected by the craft, people whose job it is to take things out of the sky as soon as they're spotted, psychologists meeting people who had an experience and who want to understand why the person has quote-unquote poltergeist phenomena in their house, or healed. Mysteriously healed, cancer gone. He says he was able to get all these different classes of people talking with each other. Jimmy Church then cuts in and asks DeLonge if DeLonge is a Bennewitz, just being fed false information. DeLonge answers no. Well, of course he would answer no. But we do have to acknowledge that as a possibility. DeLonge's being fed, what do you call him? He's being fed whammies. He's being fed lies. He's being fed something not true by somebody, maybe in an effort to prolong or to promote the defense spending, military-industrial complex, whatever, under the guise of him saying that it's all for love, bro. But it's actually just to continue government spending on defense contracts and whatnot. I don't know. But Tom DeLonge doesn't think so. He just says no. So, got to take him at his word there. Next up, there's a whole bunch of stuff I can't say, says Tom DeLonge. This week, there were 2 nights in a row where I didn't sleep. DeLonge says he's in touch with different stovepipes. All the stovepipes lead to a very, very, very small group of people. He talked to those people and pitched them an idea. Okay, so all the stovepipes lead to a very, very, very small group of people. Is that a cabal? Kind of sounds like a cabal. What's the definition of a cabal? He said it's not, though. It's like somebody involved in a multi-level marketing scheme. They don't call it one. It's not a pyramid scheme. It's not a cabal. It's not a cult. That says everybody in a cabal or a cult. Right? Secret political clique or faction. Cabal is a group of people who are united in some close design, usually to promote their private views or interests in an ideology, a state, or kind of sounds like a cabal. A lot of these little groups leading up to a small group of people who all think similar things. Okay, but maybe it's a good cabal. We don't know. He talked to those people and pitched them an idea, and they agreed to collaborate on it. But he explains it's much bigger than him. It's also much bigger than reading all those conspiracy theories and all those idiots online who write all that stupid stuff about, globalists, alien agendas, and reptile presidents. He suggests we should be mature about it. We're in a very pivotal time in our evolution, and we're going to be dealing with some things that we always thought were magic, fairy tales, or mythology. We're going to have to find a way to accept that stuff, and humanity will explode to a new place that's going to be wonderful. But we have to go about it the right way. So I like the positivity here. We could all use a little bit more positivity instead of being, you know what I mean? Like that negativity, there are reasons to be negative. There are reasons to be concerned. There are reasons to be scared. But the just constant barrage of negativity about humanity, about what it means to be human, it feels a little sinister, right? So I like that aspect of all this stuff, even if it is complete nonsense. Next, explaining slow disclosure. It's like if you have to explain to your kid what ISIS is. You wouldn't go fetch a video of a beheading from the internet, and it's not like we can't go drop a nuke on ISIS. They're not more powerful than us, and they're still bad news. This is actually what's been going on for 70-some years. It's figuring out strategies to comprehend and outwit before we educate. Yeah, hearts and minds, right? Figuring out strategies to comprehend and outwit before we educate. DeLonge states that he's very confident about the way things are heading. He expects that as his Secret Machines project rolls out, people will realize that he wasn't lying. So the first 2 books in the Secret Machines project have come out. I might read them. At this point, I'm officially obsessed with Tom DeLonge. And he's charming, of course. He's a rock star. When you listen to his interviews, you do think like, okay, this stuff is wild. But damn if he isn't charismatic. And maybe that's the charisma that got him into this position. And you have to think about, okay, this was around 2016. He was playing really fast and loose, releasing all kinds of details. Because back then, almost nobody was taking him seriously. So then he was on the radio. He was on some YouTube channels. All that stuff may not be public anymore or readily available unless you're an enthusiast seeking it out. And now he has a much more reserved approach, meaning now 2021. But back in 2016, this could have been part of the testing of the waters. Like that's a big theory with this stuff. Through media, movies, etc., you kind of trickle out pieces of information. That's one theory about Bob Lazar. They may have even expected that he may leak, and that was their way of kind of, okay, let's start planting some seeds and just kind of getting it out there in the ether so that people are sort of, when these details do start to come out officially, it's not, people aren't just completely blindsided. They've had time. At this point, we've had decades, if all this stuff is real, to kind of slowly acclimate ourselves to the idea that UFO or UFOs might be real. There are people our grandparents' age now who have been watching it the whole time and believe there's something to it. So it's been a long, slow process. That's that slow disclosure. He says people have no idea who he's dealing with and where he's at. They can write articles about it and they can say stupid stuff like I quit my band to find aliens. No, that's not what it is. I'm doing something for my country with very important people that will affect the whole world, and I made my way in there with a plan that I think may help. I don't think I'm going to change the world, but I do want to be one of the sparks, with a lot of other sparks that do that. And with the fire that ignites, it's going to be pretty effing awesome. Gotta like the energy. I like his passion. Next up, UFOs are bad news. But his group is going to come out and say, this is what we found out, this is what we did, and this is what we're doing, and this is where the human race is going. And guess what? Consciousness is incredible. It's all the head scientist wants to talk about. Consciousness is pretty incredible. I think we can all agree on that. And recently I've been watching videos from the World Science Festival, I think it is, and like Nova and Closer to the Truth, I think it's called. you can find these channels on YouTube made by like PBS or, other less out there media outlets interviewing real established scientists talking about real testable science. And consciousness is a very interesting field of study right now that we don't really understand. Consciousness and other dimensions, the holograph theory, all this stuff is actually being studied in as science beyond just conjecture and theorizing. So these are kind of the topics of current science, consciousness. So consciousness is incredible. If this stuff leads us to understanding it more, I think that's awesome. Again, all of this could be nonsense. So, okay. He says there is a God, but it's not a God that looks like Buddha or has Birkenstocks or whatever. It's a beautiful energy that connects all of us, and it creates stars and galaxies. Again, a lot of the stuff he's saying, if you use different terminology, it is pretty much Christianity or, Islam or, it's a monotheistic religion, but it's using slightly different terminology. And maybe we're at the point now where we can kind of understand some of the concepts in more of a kind of material science type of way, if that's even the right word. Some kind of, it's not just pure magic in a black box. It's something that we can start to sort of kind of express with concepts that we actually know and understand and have studied in our observable universe. Like this, once we get into this, I think is where a lot of people just shut down. Because either you're religious and it feels like it's encroaching in sacred territory that you don't want to mess with because it's central to your cosmology and your understanding of the universe, and you don't want this to challenge your faith necessarily. And then there's the opposite of people who maybe have seen some of the negative side effects of religion, of how it may make certain people less curious, of how religious people may get a hold of certain world governments and abuse that power to enforce their own beliefs. So there's plenty of reasons to, once it gets to this level, to say, nope, I'm shutting it down. But the other side of that is all the negative things around that way of thinking could be a bastardization is the only word that's coming to me. But taking the actual reality, according to Tom DeLonge, of a magical space spirit that spreads love and life in outer space, which is pretty cool if you ask me. And then over time, it became corrupted and potentially these aliens. Hey, Tom DeLonge, you're pulling me in. I'm picking up what you're throwing down. Maybe the aliens spread confusion, building off of that original sort of grain of truth that there is a larger energy leading to life and consciousness, and they corrupt it and distort it. And I mean, that's what demons do in the Bible, and I'm sure in other religions. Okay, if you're still with me, bless you. Okay, because I know this is weird. Next up, he explains that the UFO phenomenon is intricately connected to that energy. He mentions his CE5 camping experience. So CE5 is like a meditation protocol to summon UFOs, kind of. If you sit outside and you do this meditation, a UFO is going to appear. Wild stuff, I know. It's all wild. And he urges other people not to try it. He describes a sleep paralysis experience where he heard hundreds of voices all around his tent. He closed his eyes and reopened them, and 2 to 3 hours passed. Yikes. Lost time is pretty scary to me. Hundreds of voices all around his tent. That's pretty wild. Okay, there's a lot of things that exist, but that we can't see. It's normal biological, physical stuff, but we call it spiritual because we can't see it. I know this is crazy, but it's fun. it's fun to dip our toes in these crazy waters, isn't it? I think so. Next, he says he was about to put out a piece of his documentary, but some major stuff has come up in the past 2 weeks that caused him to reconsider. He says, I am 3 trillion% sure that there is a God. I will stake my life on it, but it's not a person. It's beautiful love consciousness that's in the center of a galaxy that explodes out and creates stars and planets. All the beings that are created have a radio signal back to the source. I think a lot of people who have had religious experiences have experienced this and have been discredited their whole lives or been told they're crazy and or whatever. So for certain religious people, I think what he's saying isn't really that controversial. How he got there maybe is a bit different. The universe is teeming with life. Okay, here we go. There are intelligences at all different levels on a lot of different planets. There's humans everywhere. This was my first time reading this. There's humans everywhere. Superhumans with telepathic powers even. Some of them are like us. Some of them are cavemen. There's also inorganic beings on rock planets. Oxygen is toxic to them. I got to do something about where I sit when I read this stuff because I get freaked out. I get tingles down my spine. Oxygen is toxic to them. There's weird bands of light that swim in space like whales. There's amoeba that are going around sucking energy. Some of them could be as big as Jupiter or as big as a Volkswagen. It varies. Space amoeba the size of Jupiter sucking up energy. What if we discover one of the planets in our solar system is actually a life form? That'd be pretty cool. So this reality is something we weren't aware of because we didn't, quote unquote, look up. After a while, someone, quote unquote, started looking up and trying to understand what they were seeing, and eventually they told NASA, it's okay, you can look up now. Jimmy Church talks about an experience he had at Contact in the Desert where he saw a craft through night vision goggles and it appeared to be putting on a show. He wants to know if that happened because he was projecting positive vibes. Tom DeLonge replies that, no, it's playing with you, okay? It's not a good thing. Everyone there wants to see one so bad that it's going to perform for you. And you don't want to be doing that. I'm not saying that all life out there is bad. I'm saying people just don't understand. He then goes on to explain that these things have been seen throughout history, would land, would perform miracles, which in turn created religions. But the thing is, the phenomenon kept doing that in different places, and every time a different religion would get created. And what happened after that? We started killing each other. No one stopped to talk about what they saw and put it all together. He says religions are actually all cargo cults. This is a theory he put together with Peter Levenda for his first nonfiction book, Secret Machines. So here's the one thing that I am skeptical of. Well, there's more than one thing, but here's the thing that kind of rubs me a little bit the wrong way. I tend to be skeptical of certainty, especially when you're talking about you're connecting all of these dots and the person connecting them is like, I'm sure this is how it all works. And yeah, Tom DeLonge's probably excited and passionate and energetic. All of these dots, that's a lot of dots to connect and be certain about. I always try to say when I talk about this kind of stuff, here's the things people are saying. Maybe here are the things people have told me. Here are the things I've read. But I guess maybe his enthusiasm and his ability to not discredit himself when he speaks, meaning like he doesn't say, oh, and take this all with a grain of salt. Maybe that's part of the benefit of these government people working with him. They want somebody who's committed, who really believes in it. But still, for me personally, to say all religions are cargo cults, I don't know, maybe some humans have actually had contact or awareness with this space love energy. And maybe that connection is valid. And if that's what religion is to that person, then I would say that that's a valid religion, right? If you have a connection to the source of all love and life in the universe, that's pretty much what Christianity teaches and other religions. At least that's kind of what the words of Jesus, I think, mean. Anyways, first, it creates religious experiences, and then once it has us believing different things, once it has us polarized, that's when the crashes start happening and new war technology gets discovered. So the bad ones kind of they take from our thirst for a connection to this higher power, and they distort it, they corrupt it, they tweak it, they break it, they use it against us, and then they make us fight each other. And I think that scans with history, right? With what tends to happen with religions. There's a theory, I don't remember whose theory it was that I read, but basically certain parts of the Bible are actually talking about a misunderstanding or a dark energy, as if it is the same God as that's even more out there conspiracy. I'll spare you of that, but yeah, that's a possibility if there is that space spirit of love, that these bad aliens just kind of manipulate our desire for that connection with that thing and turn it into something evil. So the problem, as Tom DeLonge understands it, is everyone is busy trying to put out a fire, but they're just fanning the flames. They're not actively extinguishing the source of the fire. They're too busy standing behind their beliefs and not willing to accept that all these belief systems that divide us come from the same source. This thing that happens is always specific to the people in the region it happened. It's always different. By design, it's meant to divide mankind by creating different beliefs. Tom DeLonge firmly believes he was let into the inner circle because he understood this. Tom DeLonge then tells a story about how he went camping with friends after hearing rumors that Bigfoot was sighted. He published this photo on Instagram. The story doesn't really go anywhere. So that's part of all of this. Like I kind of want to believe Tom DeLonge. I'm inclined to. I think he at least believes what he's talking about. But then he posts pictures of Bigfoot. On Instagram, he says, posted by a friend of a friend. I see the problem here is he's passionate, he's excited about this stuff. He's likely to believe almost anything that he's told. So how does he know that he's never being deceived or never being taken for a ride? Maybe he himself is being deceived by some of these aliens. I don't know. But this certainty of his and this excitement for things like Bigfoot, of course, maybe over time, those things have been mocked by popular media to make us think it's ridiculous. But yeah, it's hard to look past that. It's like a negative mark against Tom DeLonge's reliability or trustworthiness. But look at what's been happening. We'll see what's released with the upcoming things. Yeah. Okay, he talks about witnessing a magic trick during a meeting where one of his government contacts told a friend who was present to go grab a spoon or fork. When the friend came back, the government official asked him to put it behind his back. When he took it out again, it was bent. If you knew who these people were, you'd be crapping your pants. Magic is real, but it's not magic, it's consciousness. It's the ability for the human mind to do wondrous things that we didn't know could happen. But it's also a way for other life forms to do things we can't imagine. But it's just physics, and humanity's going to wake up, and it's going to be amazing. We're so close. Again, I know a lot of people don't like religion. When that aspect starts to get brought up, people shut down, and in many cases for good reason. But that's, in the Bible, Jesus says, you will do things that I'm doing and more. Okay. When asked how long the UFO phenomenon has been active for, Tom DeLonge says there's disparities when you ask the different stovepipes. This is due to the fact There were so many twists. At first, people thought they were dealing with space aliens. Afterward, they weren't so sure. Later on, they figured out they were right the first time, but there was more to it. This is going to sound ridiculous, but Atlantis is real, says Tom DeLonge. There's something very important about that time frame and who the humans were at that point. He says he's completely guessing at this, but okay, so finally he says he's completely guessing. I wish he would sprinkle that in a little bit more when it's a theory or a guess. So this is a guess from Tom DeLonge, rock musician. But he's going to bring up the question with an advisor, a big-time person that just joined his advisory team 2 days ago. So that could have been... that's the thing, like... To the Stars, they list their board on their website. And to my knowledge, none of these people have come out and tried to distance themselves from Tom DeLonge. Okay, how do I... to the Stars Academy. I just want to look at the list. The list of his current advisors. So these are some of the people that may have been feeding him some of this information. Of course, Tom DeLonge, Jim Simivan, 25 years as operations officer for CIA, Directorate of Operations, intelligence community consultant for training and leadership, CIA tradecraft, countering weapons of mass destruction. J. Christopher Miser, board member, private equity expert and co-founder of Viveris Capital with 30-year career of acquiring, financing, etc. Okay, so that's the business side. Advisory board, Chris Herndon, former deputy assistant to the president, 20-year government career in TCOM, Department of the Navy civilian, a CTO at one point, managing director for Morgan Franklin Corp. Dr. Hal Puthoff, 50-plus years experience as a research scientist at General Electric, National Security Agency, Stanford University, Sperry and SRI International. Advisor to NASA, Department of Defense, and a patent holder in laser communication and energy fields. Paul Rapp, brain function and consciousness consultant, professor of military and emergency medicine at Uniformed Services University. Honors include CIA Certificate of Commendation for significant contributions to the mission of the Office of Research and Development. Former CIA Counterintelligence Weapons Program. Dr. Norm... I mean, look, these are the kind of people he's surrounding himself with. Of course, they could all be part of a cult. It's always a possibility. Smart people, connected people have been dragged into cults before. Look at Scientology. This could just be like Scientology. So next, he says his, okay, big time person, advisory team. He can't ask until the end of September because he can only meet his person face to face. He says his question will be whether or not the civilization at that time had the ability to repel the phenomenon with consciousness. So they had, at the time of Atlantis, which Tom DeLonge claims was real, they might have had some consciousness amplification technology that pushed away the baddies with positive vibes, bro. Okay. There's potential that humanity at that time frame was so elevated that none of these life forms or parasites could mess with us. The UFO phenomenon has a hive mind. These creatures potentially don't have souls. They're like clones. They worship their own technology to some degree, but they feed off fear and negativity. The one thing that they cannot stand is the frequency of elevated human consciousness. That's the best way for them to make sure we stay at a low, or what's the best way to make sure we stay at a low level? Just crash something and bam, the transistor is born. Keep giving humans technology, cell phones, etc. So they walk around like soulless cyborgs, all getting directions from machines. People think I'm controlling my devices. In actuality, you're so focused on these things that you never take the time to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and realize that we're all connected. So this is some like kind of transcendental meditation type stuff. A lot of people who meditate regularly come to these kinds of realizations that everything is connected, that you have a higher purpose, that you have a connection to some original source of love, that you're more than just your own physical body, that your consciousness can observe your physical body and observe your thoughts. You can have kind of a dialogue with your thoughts. And people who meditate on this kind of stuff, even Sam Harris, who's a skeptic in terms of religion and stuff, he's into meditation, and his observations from meditation lead him to believe that ultimately there isn't really a free will. You can observe the thoughts in your head and realize that you're not the one making them. They occur to you. So a lot of this stuff, it's taking like a little sprinkle of what people have learned from meditation here, a little dash of some new age stuff here, a little bit of Christianity here. And I think that turns a lot of people off because it's familiar enough, and they have experience with this stuff that maybe it didn't turn out well, or it all turned out to be a crackpot BS, whatever. And so they write it off. And Tom DeLonge could very well be a charlatan. All these people that he's working with could very well be charlatans. And I think there's probably a lot of people who still, that's what they're saying. Still, it's interesting to read. The group DeLonge is in touch with is trying to figure out how to get out of the cycle, and his idea seemed like it just might work, even if it's no silver bullet. DeLonge says he thinks humanity has risen and fallen through multiple cycles through the deceit and design of the UFO phenomenon. He tells a story about a time he tried to talk to a suicidal person hanging off the edge of a bridge, and then the person jumped. He uses the story to contrast real-life violence to TV/media violence. Our culture perpetuates an obsession with violence for entertainment. We pay money to see violence to experience it. Yeah, okay. Governments know that it's happening on purpose. As soon as we decide to stop doing that, it's going to be a completely different world. But we do have ISIS, we do have terrorists, but hopefully not for long. Isn't it weird that we're suddenly talking about space and NASA's going to Europa and we're finding all these planets? Something's coming, and I know what's coming, and it's going to be great. When you turn on the news and you see stuff that makes you feel bad, it lowers your frequency. So, like lowering your frequency, that's another very new agey sounding thing that probably turns off people. And guess what wants you to feel that way? The universe is teeming with life, and a life form wants you to feel that way. So just don't feel that way, and you're free and clear. So even if that's not literally true, I do think there is some truth to that, where, obviously feeling despair, giving into despair, it's not necessarily productive. Sometimes it feels like the right thing to do. I was giving into despair just earlier today, reading YouTube comments. That's one thing that I keep from my Christian upbringing of reading the fruits of the Spirit. If you know what, we're going to dive in. We're going to do an aside. The fruits of the Spirit. These bring me comfort, and these guide my path in terms of, okay, should I waste my energy on this? I was saying that I feel like a lot of the negativity and pessimism is sinister. I really do. I don't know literally if it's a an entity of some kind that's responsible for that, but it's sinister. And so these things, the fruits of the Spirit, are what I have found to help guide me in a better direction. So the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. So if I'm feeling motivated by fear, or if I'm feeling motivated by hatred or vengeance or any of these things, I know that that's not going to bring me to a good place from my own personal experience. So even just anecdotally, I know that love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control won't lead me astray in my experience. So if we become dismayed and lose all hope and just give in to these dark, negative feelings, I don't think it's going to lead us to a good place. It's that simple. So I don't use that as evidence to necessarily believe what Tom DeLonge's saying. Honestly, I think what he's describing sounds pretty cool. I would like to believe it. But I'm not going to just totally jump on board and say, yeah, this is definitely what's happening. Maybe pieces of it are true. He says, I know it sounds strange. Why do you think I want to whiteboard the entire thing through movies, books, and documentaries? Because it's difficult for people to understand in one conversation. It sounds like stupid magic hokey pokey stuff. I know. Why don't you sit with the guys I'm sitting with and tell them they don't know what they're talking about? He laughs. It makes sense. It all makes sense. It's unreal, man. We're capable of something insanely good, and we're just around the corner from it. So Jimmy Church, the radio host, says, no one from the government is going to come out and say, okay, we lied to you, which DeLonge doesn't deny. He then asks what's going to happen. DeLonge then freezes and says, it's not going to be the president or Congress. The government doesn't deal with the UFO topic the way you think they would. They're not in charge of it the way you'd expect that they would be. So it's not going to be the president or Congress. And now we see this report was forced out of the Pentagon, basically, by request in the stimulus package that Trump passed. Will that start this bigger conversation that Tom DeLonge is predicting? We don't know. Time will tell. Probably, obviously, a lot of these almost none of these sensational details are going to be in that initial report, but it's going to be something like, okay, here's some data that we have. Here's why it shows that it's interesting. Here's what we do and don't know, probably with a lot of things redacted. But it's going to begin then a bigger conversation. We're talking about potentially many years or decades for all of this level that Tom DeLonge, if it's real, let's say the Tom DeLonge theories are real, we could still be many decades out of any of it coming to light to the public in any official capacity. So, yeah. He says that when he thinks of the people that handled the UFO topic, he says, oh my God, I wouldn't want the job. I would not want that job. And if I was given it, I don't know what I would do. A few people handle it so that you can go to the movies with your family, go to the beach, and have a life. Other people are walking around with a briefcase and multiple PhDs, and they can't even sleep because they're dealing with something that's really difficult. The government does have bad apples, but the UFO topic is not being covered up by the government in the way that you would think. Where it exists and where it's managed is in a different type of mechanism. You can't blame the normal institutions that you think are like godlike superpowers. It's not that way with this topic. The entire globe is involved. The United States is the leader. It's doing the majority of the work, and it's pushing everybody. We're the first country for the free mind, for the free people. There's a reason. It's because we were the enlightened idea of a people. And that idea spread. We call it democracy. We call it Western civilization. Even on this pretty big, ugly deal, America is working for the countries that hate it. We're out there fighting something for them. It's unreal. It's really inspiring. Jimmy Church talks about Bob Lazar. Tom DeLonge says Secret Machines is putting out Bob Lazar's autobiography shortly. Bob Lazar documentaries on Netflix. Check it out. It's interesting. It's weird. It's interesting. Not sure how I feel about the Mickey Rourke narration segments. I would probably be just about as happy with just an extended interview with Bob Lazar. But anyways, Tom DeLonge thinks Bob Lazar is very credible. Lazar was under the belief that all the work on the UFO phenomenon was being done at Area 51 at S4. Also, that UFOs are far, far away. Although those things were not true, Lazar did work on the stuff, and he was there. People need to read the autobiography. You know, Tom DeLonge, he seems to take in a lot of information and be a kind of trusting guy. That makes me a little bit cautious with the things he's talking about. Maybe Bob Lazar was fed some false information as part of his involvement with the government, so that not everything went out. Maybe the government back then had incorrect information. I don't know. So the government isn't conducting its research in secret because it's hiding it from taxpayers. It's hiding from the phenomenon itself. The breakthroughs that we have are a competitive advantage to the battlefield. Tom DeLonge reads the answer to a question he asked an associate. How does a non-physical entity create a physical object like a flying saucer? The answer, using nanofabrication, atomic layer by atomic layer, with durable nanotexturing and quantum entanglement properties, and of course, powered by the polarization vacuum, same methods that cryptoterrestrials use. So this excerpt was recently pulled back out onto the main UFO subreddit as people pointing out as something pretty interesting. If these entities are in a different dimension or a different layer of reality than what we call this third dimension physical reality, how do they interact with it? Like if they're on a completely different layer of existence, the UFOs that we're encountering, and maybe that's part of why UFOs have a certain amount of limitations, is that they're elaborate constructions that transcend dimensions through quantum entanglement. One aspect of quantum theory, actually, in the real world of science, is that both states exist. The one we observe and the one that we don't observe. That's the quantum state. Well, it's crazy. I can't really explain it in much more detail than that. I don't really understand it, but that's my understanding. So they're using quantum entanglement to send a version of an object they have in their what we would call the quantum realm or their other dimension, and they manipulate that object in their dimension, which we then the other side, the other half of that object somehow survives into our dimension. It's crazy stuff. And cryptoterrestrials is another thing that people were interested in. Those are, cryptids, cryptozoology, meaning Bigfoot and other things. Life on this planet, potentially in our observable dimension or observable reality, but it's life that we don't really understand. Chupacabra, Bigfoot, abominable snowman, Loch Ness monster. A lot of these are considered cryptids. So there could, according to this, what Tom DeLonge's saying, there could be intelligent life like that on Earth. Maybe in the oceans. Maybe, who knows? Maybe just they've been advanced enough this whole time to hide from us. Oh, man. How much more of this is there? Okay, I gotta speed up because there's a lot more. No more asides. The human spirituality component of consciousness and the positive feelings of love and happiness are very important, as important as drinking a glass of water. The military and intelligence community and other areas of the DoD know about it and they take it very seriously. DeLonge says he has important stuff to say about Starfish Prime, the 1962 nuclear test in space. We learned quite a lot from the test. It was the main test where we were able to study and learn about EMP. Actually, when the whole world was focused on the Cuban Missile Crisis, something else was going on. That something else may have brought something down. And that something that brought something down taught us a lot about EMP and how we could use it to catch things that are hiding. He says as soon as we start detonating nuclear bombs, there are UFOs everywhere and every time. And there's a reason why. It's because it can actually F up those little ankle biters. And they know it. And even they, as advanced as they are, they can't get away from it. Makes you really wonder why we did so many nuclear tests. Why we have so many nuclear weapons. Why we do tests everywhere, in the sky, underground. DeLonge says during the entire Cold War, we were working with the Soviet Union. Our relationship together on this issue is what kept the Cold War from going hot. He believes the Soviets were in the room with us when Starfish Prime was detonated. Everyone wanted to see us fly swat some bugs out of the sky. Roswell did happen, according to Tom DeLonge. He explains the findings with Starfish Prime were different from the findings at Roswell, but equally as important. It's a whole other story in and of itself, but it won't be talked about until Secret Machines Book 2 comes out. I gotta read these books. More videos, I guess, are gonna be about Tom DeLonge, so buckle up. Speaking about the technological help we receive from aliens, when you refer to help, help can be a variety of things. It can be a crash. A crash could be because we shot it down, because the lightning brought it down, or maybe they faked getting hit by lightning or getting shot down. For every event, you have to ask, is it intentional? Is it direct contact? Are you led to contact, or is the contact led to you? Another way help happens. Do you have indirect contact? Do you have thoughts put in your mind when you wake up one morning because you don't know what happened while you were sleeping? Tom DeLonge believes that the DNA molecule shoots information into the source. The DNA molecule is very rare for that job. There's something about the genome that is desired by other life forms that don't have that power and that connection. DeLonge feels that his career, taking into account all his business endeavors outside Blink-182, make him curiously fit for the job of leading this disclosure effort. He says he had a handful of companies that failed, but he moved on. He says the past 20 years led up to him being able to do what he's doing now. He knew how to approach high-ranking people and talk to them about sensitive subjects. He mentions being interrogated for 2 days by someone who wanted to know how he knew all the things he put in his book. At the end of the 2 days, the interrogator told him to keep doing what he's doing, that it was a good thing. DeLonge denounces shows like Ancient Aliens, says it's alien worshipping. Aliens made us. Aliens built everything. Aliens are gods. There needs to be a mechanism in place that educates people not to idolize them because they're not good. He specifies that he's talking about one specific race of alien, which he and his contacts nicknamed the Bugs. Also, people are not to blame. Neither are the people that appear on these shows. They just don't know the truth. Referring to Trump partially, when any candidate of any country pops up and starts to inflame things with bigoted, divisive comments, that's when those guys say, what a great formula for war. It's the UFO thing. It's implanted ideas and suggestions. It's a chess game. We're trying to defeat the chess game. DeLonge also talks about candidate Hillary Clinton. This all was in 2016, before the elections, the 2016 elections. He says she is not mentioning UFOs in the media for votes because it's not something that gets you votes. It's because it's time. It's going to start coming and people need to listen up. So, of course, immediately, in our polarized political reality, Tom DeLonge saying something negative about Trump and not negative about Clinton is enough to turn a lot of people off right there. And there's a lot of distrust of the Clintons. That could be fuel for a lot of people's fire of saying that maybe he is being taken for a ride and being fed a lie by, the globalists, the deep state, whatever you want to call it or whatever you want to say about that. So we have to change the way we treat each other. It's not humanity's fault that we hate each other. We were designed to hate each other. We need to put the weapons down and grab each other by the arms, look up and say, "You bastards." Hopefully we can all agree on that. I see this expressed all over the place. People saying, "It's divide and conquer." Don't believe it, but then they'll say that, and then they'll turn around and keep saying the sorts of things that divide them from other people. You can't have it both ways. If you think it's divide and conquer, then stop blaming other people and start listening to them. That's what's really frustrating to me. Okay. He briefly mentions that Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev were actually working together despite appearances. Okay, last chunk. We're almost there. Tom DeLonge has heard of the Black Knight satellite conspiracy, but doesn't believe there's anything to it. Apparently, Pepsi incorporated the Black Knight satellite into an ad at the time. Nothing is going to come out with Pepsi or something dumb. It's going to come out in a very elevated, prestige kind of way. DeLonge says he has many questions for his advisors and keeps being led into different directions that are out of his comfort zone. He alludes to an earlier event he mentioned that was described to him as part military, part spiritual. I mean, maybe that is a reference to the theories of occult at high levels being true. He then reads a text message that he received while the interview was happening from one of his very high-ranking advisors. "If I say to you one day that I no longer believe in the metaphysical reality of God, how would I answer a later question asking if I've ever felt the presence of God?" This gives you an idea of the kinds of topics that come up. When asked if he was afraid for his safety, DeLonge says the reason he went banging on doors to ask for permission is that he was afraid of the whole thing. We're dealing with the most secretive topic on Earth, the most explosive topic on Earth, a phenomenon that is extraordinarily powerful, like the gods of ancient myths. He says you have to approach all this with respect. He's still in the process of going around asking for permission, so he recommends you keep watching him. If you see that the second book never comes out, that's how you'll know that someone said not now, not the right time. Yeah, massive transcript. Thank you to Kiwi Bonga, moderator of our UFO, for writing all of this down back in 2016. It has survived 5 years for us to look back on and read in anticipation for this Pentagon report. What's going to be in it? I wonder. Any of these juicy details? Probably not. More acknowledgement of some data and people kind of shrugging and saying we don't know what it is? I find that likely. But the conversation will continue. Remember what Tom DeLonge says. It's a slow drip disclosure. Stuff to think about. I don't know. I don't know what to make of any of this. You know, I kind of like parts of it. That doesn't mean it's real. But I did spend about an hour of my time reading it. So thank you for sticking around. And if you're still here, thanks for spending about an hour of your life listening to it. Hope you had some fun. I will be back again with another video about UFOs or something like that. So if that's what you like, if you want to hear more stuff like this, please subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time on Spaceship Kyle. Bye.